Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me again for another exciting episode of Bible Book Club. I know you all are riveted and can't wait to see the next installment, so here we go. All right, so where did we leave off? Obviously, we're still in Genesis, the first book, and I believe we are around chapter 17. So we just saw the name change of Abraham. I'm sorry, the name change from Abram to Abraham. So this is something that I couldn't quite find an answer to, because we're going to see that Sarai also gets her name changed to Sarah. So they add an H to both. From what I was able to gather online, and I would love if someone could possibly answer this, that the reason that it has something to do with God's covenant changing, I guess, because like Yahweh was used to be spelled with no vowels, so it has something to do with that, with Yahweh's covenant to Abram and Sarah, or Abraham and Sarah adding the H to the name. So I don't get it. If it could be explained to me, that'd be fantastic. But anyhow, moving on. So let's see here. Genesis. Going from my notes? Genesis 17, 15 through 19. We have Sarah's name change, and we see God's promise and covenant to Sarah and her soon-to-be son Isaac. Kings will be from his line, just the same as Ishmael was promised. So essentially, we're getting, we have, like we talked about last time, we have the split of Isaac and Ishmael, the two sons of Abraham, and the split going, Isaac becoming, the father of Christianity essentially, and then Ishmael becoming the father of Islam. And when I say father, I mean like the lineage, the lines branch out from both of these people, giving us all the way to Jesus and all the way conversely to Muhammad. Let's see. Everyone goes off and gets circumcised. So Genesis 17, 15 through 19, we see a bunch of circumcisions. So that's God essentially makes everyone get circumcised. Even though Abraham was 100 years old when he got circumcised, and Ishmael was 13. So that's that. I'm sure that was a memorable day for both. Let's see here. We're going to skip to Genesis chapter 19. Genesis chapter 19 is where we see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the wicked land of Sodom and Gomorrah that we have all, we all know about. Lot's wife being turned to a pillar of salt for turning around and looking. The theories of, once again, I'll go off on tangents from time to time. And this one's the ancient alien theory tangent of, was Sodom and Gomorrah hit by a nuclear weapon, nuclear explosions, and they say that they have evidence in the form of volcanic glass that can only be created at certain temperatures high enough. Essentially, it could only be created by a nuclear type explosion. So that's one of those theories on Sodom and Gomorrah that's obviously outside of the box, but it's interesting. Let's see. So I have here to read aloud. This is a good part here. This is where we get the X-rated version of Bible story. This is probably why children are given little kids' Bibles to read at confirmation and not this. So Genesis chapter 19, 31 through 38. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. So I should preface this. This is Lot's two daughters conversing with each other. They're just leaving Sodom and Gomorrah after it's been destroyed. And for some reason, they think they're like the last human beings on earth, that they have to repopulate the earth. And once again, this is Lot and his two daughters. So this is who we're dealing with. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come into us, or unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, and that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father, and the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. This is just, you'll find this kind of stuff on websites that this book would very much frown upon. So it's devilish to go look upon these things on websites. I'm not arguing that, but yet again, it's in the book here. It's just that's makes sense. So we have to remember, and this is what I kind of wrote down a note for. Essentially, the Moabites and the Ammon people are people from the hills have eyes. So I am anticipating, if I ever see the Moabites or the Ammons again, and say like Judges or later on down the line in the Torah, I'll know that where they came from. They came from an incestuous father-daughter relationship. So the Moabites and the Ammons are people have eyes people. So these are the best of God's people. This is the best of the best. This is who we're. This is the best. So this is what we got. This is humanity's finest, according to Yahweh. Genesis chapter 20. Moving along right after this good stuff here. It tells me, I'm telling myself to read the whole thing here. It must be. Okay. I'm going to read Genesis chapter 20. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech, king of the Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So once again, Abraham, haven't you learned your lesson? Why are you lying again to this Abimelech? Why are you lying, just like you did with the Pharaoh, about Sarah being your sister? Don't you recall the troubles that led to last time? So Abraham's at it again lying. Abraham said of Sarah, she is my sister, and Abimelech, king of the Gerar, sent and took Sarah. What does that mean, took Sarah? But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Interesting. So Abimelech, perhaps he heard of Abraham's treachery from Egypt, and he decided, no, I'm not going to get punished like the Egyptians for Abraham's actions. I'm not going to lay with Sarah. So, and God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. So essentially God says to Abimelech, no, it wasn't you. I got into your heart and allowed you not to do this. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants, and told all these things in their ears. And the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us, and what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What sawest thou, and that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. Abraham just thought, you aren't holy people, so I have to lie because you're going to kill me. Once again, cowardly, lying, unfaithful. Second time, God's promised Abraham lines of people, and your lineage will be kings of men and all this stuff, and he's still just an unbeliever of the Lord. Because surely this place doesn't have the fear of God. Okay, so Genesis 20:12 here. And yet indeed, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, and not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place whither we shall come. Say of me, he is my brother. Abimelech took the sheep and oxen, men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee. Dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee covering the eyes. So Abraham prayed unto God. So basically, Abraham just paid a bunch of silver and a bunch of gold by Abimelech, and once again, we see Abraham at it again, just essentially pimping out his wife Sarah, with an H now at least, and he gets all kinds of good stuff. And Abimelech is like, here, just take everything. I'm sorry, like. So let's see here. Genesis 20:18. I have a question about that. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. For the Lord had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Just punished for others' sins. I mean, it's. And here's the interesting thing about Abimelech, from what I've. Some names that you'll see in the Bible repeat over and over, and Abimelech was one of them. I found his name later on, I believe, in this chapter. So essentially, it could be looked upon like Abimelech could be looked upon as the same as Pharaoh. So you have Pharaoh, it could be Ramses II, Ramses I, Tutankhamun, Amun-Ra, like all these pharaohs go under one umbrella, just like an Abimelech. It's essentially like a king. So there could be multiple Abimelechs down the line. Just keep that in mind. If we hear Abimelech in, let's say, Judges or Deuteronomy, and obviously he can't survive, just keep that in mind. Anyway. Well, let's see. Why would I ask that question? That's why I would ask. So Sarah becomes pregnant shortly hereafter. And I wonder, but Abimelech said that he didn't lay with Sarah, so my question, I guess, is kind of moot, that Isaac is definitely not the son of Abimelech, but I guess they didn't sleep together. But why is Abraham getting paid all kinds of silver and whatnot anyway? All right. Genesis 22:12. So let's go to 22:12, Genesis 22. And I'm going to read 11 and 12 here. Genesis 22:11. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. So this is the famous restraint of Abraham. I guess he takes Isaac up to the rock and is going to kill him, and because God said so. And here's the thing, this is interesting. It wasn't God that steadied the hand. It's not the Lord. So I've always thought that God came down to him and said, whoa, stop. It's not. God has been referred to this entire time as the Lord. So this is, and the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, Abraham. So essentially it's like this angel coming in panic, like, Abraham, Abraham, stop, stop, stop. It's not God. It's not the Lord. It's an angel of the Lord. So that was something that I definitely had wrong. Genesis 22:14. I have a question here. It says, so Jehovah is a place. Genesis 22:14. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So the first time, because obviously we've heard of Jehovah, that's another name for God. I've always been, it's what Indiana Jones, Jehovah is spelled with an I. That's famous. Only the penitent man will pass. So Jehovah is the name of God. But here, this is the first time that I've seen Jehovah in Genesis. So the first time it's been in the Torah, and it's referred to as a place. So is Jehovah a place? Genesis 22:14 indicates that it is. All right, so moving on to Genesis chapter 24:25. Okay. Genesis 24:25. All right, so I have here the synopsis of Genesis 24:25. Abraham takes another wife and has more children, and Esau sells Jacob his birthright. So Esau sells Jacob his birthright. I thought that was going to come into play. It didn't really come into play later on. It just kind of says it in passing. I forget where, but it says Esau sells his birthright, like I said. So, all right, Genesis 26. And once again, how I'm doing this, I'm reading some passages that I find important. I'm going ahead and reading ahead and making notes, and then coming back and trying to make these videos. And this one I'm going to try to get through the rest of Genesis. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I'm summarizing a lot of these. So I might skip multiple chapters. Just keep that in mind. So if you're following along with me, I encourage you just do the same thing I'm kind of trying to do. Just read, make notes that are interesting, and if our notes correspond, then fantastic. All right, let's see. Genesis 26. This is summarizing Genesis 26 here. We see Isaac, the father-like son, so Isaac does the same thing that Abraham, his father, does, and lies about his relationship with Rebekah, his wife. And he says that Rebekah is his sister. Same exact thing happens. We're reintroduced to the Abimelech's, king of the Philistines now. So yeah, it's the same thing Isaac does in Genesis chapter 26 that his father did earlier, lying about. And also, God has promised Isaac the same things that the Lord has promised. The Lord has promised Isaac the same things that the Lord promised Abraham. Kings will be from your lineage and great lines, and you're going to have all kinds of kids and important, all that stuff. So, once again, we see a lack of faith. Even though the Lord is telling Isaac this, he's still lying because I was afraid. My Rebecca's just so pretty, and you people are just not godly. So I had to lie because you guys would kill me and have my wife. Okay, so Genesis 26. There we go. That's about the Philistines. Genesis 27. Okay. Yeah. So Rebekah overhears Isaac, who's on his deathbed. Isaac implores his eldest son Esau to go kill a deer and cook him savory meat for his last request, essentially. So go get your bow, go kill a deer, and cook me savory meat. I looked down upon this initially when I read it because, you know, it's one of the, once again, I'm not a vegan or not a vegetarian. I eat meat and I enjoy it. But I thought, oh, you know, that's the last thing that you want is just, you know, deer to eat meat before you die. You know, you think about the hypothetical situation of you on death row, and you know, what would your last meal be? Steak and, you know, Thanksgiving dinner is high on the list. Steak and potato might be on the list. So I get it. I get it. If you want savory meat as you're on your deathbed, hey, who am I to judge? So, anyway, so Jacob and Rebekah trick Isaac, and basically they dress Jacob up in like fur, because apparently Esau's a hairy guy and Jacob's not, so they dress him up in fur, and he goes over and tricks his dad into thinking that he is Jacob. So Isaac gets a blessing from his father and not Esau. So when Esau returns with his father's meal as asked, Esau is made the sword of Jacob and basically under Jacob's yoke. So Esau leaves. And this is interesting because we've seen Esau apparently sell his birthright before this anyway. But that is struck as moot because now we're seeing Esau come back in. Jacob has already bamboozled Isaac, pretended that he's Esau, has got his father's blessing. Now his father, like, I've already given my blessing. Sorry, Esau, you're the sword of Jacob. So Jacob's the man, you're the second man now. So it's kind of trickery. So basically Jacob, okay, so we're going to skip ahead. Genesis 29. This is where we're getting into Egypt. We're seeing, we're getting closer to the introduction of the Lord's chosen people going to Egypt. So, Genesis 29, 30 through 31. Let's see here. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So we have Rachel and Leah, and they're 2 daughters of Laban. And Jacob basically works for 7 years for one daughter, then he decides he wants the other daughter too, and he works 7 more years for Laban. So he works 14 years and gets 2 wives out of the deal. And for some reason, there was jealousy between the 2 wives. And the Lord saw that and plays on it. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, so Leah is hated by Rachel, essentially, jealous, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So so God, we're going to see this multiple times. We've seen this, when was that I just mentioned earlier, about the Lord, you know, closing up wombs and stuff and making women barren. This strikes of genetic manipulation to me. You know, perhaps that's my Michael Tessarian ancient alien, you know, viewpoint of it, but it makes a lot of sense. And when you weigh in all of the evidence in terms of how differing people are genetically in comparison to, you know, what we think of as straight line linear Darwinian evolution, there's so many red flags that go up that it begs the question, like, man, we stick out like a sore thumb on this place. Like humanity is, you know, the wrecker to straight line Darwinian evolution, seemingly, just because there's anomalies within our makeup. So let's see here. Okay, so basically Jacob serves, like I said, 2 7-year work terms, and gets Laban's daughters as wives. So the Lord sees Leah was hated and allows her to have children, even though Rachel was barren. So Leah has 4 sons, And this is Jacob's ladder. This is the 12 tribes. 4 initial, so 2 wives, 4, and then 8. So anyway, we see Jacob get 4 sons from Rachel. So we have Genesis 31:31. What do we have here? Genesis 31:31. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest take my force thy daughters from me. Okay, so here we go. This one is very similar to the family motto here of lying and just leaving. And so Jacob leaves, and I think he takes Laban's property. If I recall correctly in Genesis 31 here, he storms out, or doesn't storm out, but he leaves in the middle of the night and takes a bunch of stuff from Laban, and he gives an excuse like, I thought, man, I just thought you guys were going godly and you're going to kill me, so I left. It's the same tried and true method of just excuse making. Let's see, 31:31. So Jacob gives the tried and true coward excuse that has worked for his father and grandfather. Jacob tells Laban that he stole his stuff and fled in the night because he was scared Laban would take his daughters away. So Laban has given no indication, at least from what we've read here, there's no indication of any nefarious activities. Jacob just, sorry man, I'm out. Sorry, I'm out. I thought you guys thought you were gonna kill me, man. So, all right, Genesis 34. Moving on, we're getting close here. Thank you for staying with me. Appreciate that. Genesis chapter 34. So here I have written, let the wanton murdering begin. So one of Jacob's daughters, Dinah, this is a good story, but horrible. Okay, so we see Jacob he's a big deal. So he's got kids and daughters and sons and lineage all over. So basically, Jacob's daughter Dinah and Prince Sheshem. So Sheshem is another one that we see. It's almost like the Abel Melech. There will be multiple Sheshems. So Sheshem, basically, it seems like it's a teenage love. Like they hook up, they fall in love. Sheshem is in love. It says his soul is tied to her. It's very powerful. Let me read. And his Genesis chapter 34, 3 and 4. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel. He loved her, his soul was cleaved to her, and he spoke kindly. He was a good man, it sounds like. Genesis 34, 4. And Sheshem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, get me this damsel to wife. So he asks his dad, he even goes through, can you see if you can work this out between, Jacob and Dinah, and I love her, and my soul is clave to Dinah. So the Jacob family and his son sees it as defilement. That's how they view it. It's Dinah has been defiled by Sheshem, even though he loves her. However, even though Sheshem is very much in love with Dinah, Jacob and the prince's father agree for themselves and all the men to be circumcised in order for Sheshem and Dinah to marry. So I believe this is his 2 sons, Levi and one of them, basically say, all right, yeah, if everyone gets circumcised, you can marry Dinah. That's the deal. So they agree, Sheshem and his father and all the men agree, and they get circumcised, all of them. So on the 3rd day, when dicks were sore, when the penises were sore because they got chopped off 3 days ago because the God's covenant, they got circumcised at 30 years old, or old, like teenagers, old, way older than a baby. Like, you shouldn't do it as a baby probably, but anyway, so these are old dudes. The whole village gets circumcised. It says that they are sore on the third day. Jacob's 2 sons took up swords and murdered the men, stole their wealth, women, and children. It's in there. Let's see if I can find it. Genesis chapter 34:25. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. So 2 guys pick up swords, 2 of the Jacob's sons, even though they had made a pact. They tricked them. They lied and killed all the men that were sore from getting their dicks chopped off 3 days before. So this is Jacob's sons. So the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep and their oxen, their asses, that which was in the city, that which was in the field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house, and all their wealth, all their little ones, and their wives took captive. Little ones. Do we see any correlations today? Ask yourself this. When you look out at society, when you look out even deeper, for those that have researched the dark underbelly of Satanism and child sacrifice and horrificness, it's just horrible. Where does this stem from? Where does this come from, Lord? Ask yourself. Genesis 35:10. So here we have Jacob. Here we have the famous name change. Genesis 35:10. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. So here we see the introduction of Israel. So when we see Israel, the country, it's Jacob. It's Jacob and Israel. Jacob is Israel. Like, it's the same thing. So Jacob and his 12 tribes become the 12 tribes of Israel, as some of us have heard about. And I'm not, studied in that. Maybe I will. It seems interesting. Where did these 12 lines go? What have they done? Who knows? But here we go. 35:10. Jacob changed to Israel. Genesis 37. Genesis 37. So here we see Joseph in the coat of many colors. We've heard that Bible story. Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers. That whole thing. So one of Israel's sons, Joseph. Genesis chapter 37. Here we see Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers. It seems odd how high Joseph's position is for just a slave. So he's sold into slavery, but he's sold to an officer of the Pharaoh. Normal slaves, like we saw, Russell Crowe wasn't sold and became Commodus's henchman, like his right-hand man. Typically when someone's sold into slavery, that's a slave is the bottom of the barrel of, we're supposed to be beholden, we're slaves. But this is a slave that's sold into the house of Pharaoh. So that should ring some bells saying, who are these people? So we've already seen that, these are important people according to the Lord. So, they're all the same now anyway. So they're all related again, just like Adam and Eve. So we've got, these are all the same people that survived the flood. with Noah. So now it's just all the same humanity, but they speak different languages because God came down and when the people were coming together, and the Tower of Babel situation that we heard about earlier. So 37. So Joseph sold into slavery, but a high position, an officer of the Pharaoh. So Genesis 38:41. So I'm summarizing several chapters here. Genesis 38 through 41 is approximately, basically the story of Joseph and his dream interpretations that were very successful in Egypt. So Joseph has dreams that, about grain and about a famine and about storing grain and so essentially his dreams are listened to, they come to pass, and he becomes very powerful person, like almost literally like the Pharaoh's right-hand man. Like this is the guy that he's close to God. He was able to predict all this stuff, and saved Egypt and actually helped Egypt come out of this famine, arguably even way more powerful because they were able to store up everything and kind of prepare for this stuff because of Joseph's dream interpretations. So, running along here, we're going Genesis 42:29. Here's some just random questions that I have after reading some passages and just wondering what exactly was going on that I couldn't quite answer. So Genesis 42:29. And they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and they told him all that befell unto them, saying, see, this is the switch from, there are a lot of these, where it goes from Jacob to Israel back to Jacob, so they don't refer to him as Israel anymore, they refer to him back to Jacob. And one is within, one verse here will have Jacob, and then the very verse below is Israel. So I don't quite follow why the change, because we've already seen, his name is supposed to be Israel now, but it's referred to as Jacob multiple times here in the later chapters of Genesis. So I'm giving another example here. So Genesis 45:27 and 28. Yeah, so this is what I was referring to. Genesis chapter 45, verse 27. And they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, it is enough, Joseph my son is yet alive. So it goes from referring to him as Jacob within the next sentence. Once again, it's referring to him as Israel. Another interesting one about money failing. In Genesis 47:15. This was interesting to me because this is the second time that I saw money, the word money in the translation. Money is very vague, obviously. So we have silver, gold. These are the things that we commonly think of as used for money thousands of years ago. We had the barter system. We had beads and rocks and gemstones as opposed to cash backed by nothing now, but cash backed by conceivably gold, whatever. So I found it interesting. Genesis 47:15 says, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. Interesting. That's money failing in ancient Egypt. What does that mean? That's, who knows? It could be a lot of things, but generally speaking, when we hear of money failure, it's fiat currency. The Weimar Republic comes to mind, of wheelbarrows full of cash for loaves of bread. So was there? I can't imagine. Gold wouldn't fail, silver wouldn't fail, but money failed. It's interesting. That's Egyptian stuff we're hearing about. So, all right. And now I'm getting into my chapter summary here. So we're done with Genesis. Woo! Congratulations. We're through Genesis. We're going to Exodus. 1 out of 5, 20%. 20% approximately of the way through the Torah, or the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, whatever you'd like to refer to it as. We're through. But a couple more notes here, just to end up on Genesis. Excuse me. So the interesting thing that I found going into Exodus here. So I'll ask, what do we commonly think of when we think about Moses and his exodus from Egypt? We think about let my people go. We think about slavery. We think about, all these poor Hebrews, Israelites, building the pyramids, being slaves. That didn't happen, by the way. But that's a lot of that's how people view this, and that's how I used to view it, because that's how I was taught. But if you think about this, and this will be interesting when we get into Exodus to see how this plays out. Moses is a high up guy. Like, Moses is essentially second in line to Pharaoh. Like, even though he's not even an Egyptian, this is crazy. So, and as we could see from Joseph, he became, the Israelites are in Egypt. They're a big deal. The Hebrews, I refer to them as the Israelites because that's, the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob. They're there. They're in Egypt, and they're not slaves, man. Like, they're right up there with Pharaoh. They're very important people. So is this construct that we've been sold about let my people go and this exit out of Egypt, I'm wondering if this is going to be, what we're going to find out in Exodus. But anyway, we will find out. The Egyptians seem to be treating them very well, is what I'm saying. The Pharaohs are treating them very well. Abraham gave the Pharaoh the business, lied to him, had this, Pharaoh got plagued by God, kicked, they're like, get out of here. I don't want to. So the Egyptians were getting kind of the business from the Abrahamics. They weren't, and they were letting them, letting Joseph in. Like, they were very accommodating. Anytime you see Pharaoh or referred to like in this, they're pretty nice. They're pretty accommodating. They're not what we've been conditioned to believe, at least at this point. So Joseph is a big deal with Pharaoh. Joseph forgives his brothers, and Pharaoh agrees to have Israel's whole family come to Egypt and live. So all of them. So Israel goes to his father. So Joseph goes and gets his dad and his brothers, brings them all to Egypt. So Israel / Jacob gathers all his sons and families, and they go to Egypt. These people are treated like royalty. Both Israel and Joseph eventually die. Both are embalmed and buried. So the embalming, that's another interesting thing. When you read the word embalm in the Bible, or in the Old Testament here, we hadn't seen it anywhere before. We'd seen, it's kind of like goes without saying in some of these things, that guys are buried in certain places or people are buried in certain places, but this embalming is seemingly ritualistic. And is this embalming like the Egyptians? That's what they did, was embalm and wrap and mummify. Is that what we're hearing here? The embalming is this mummification that they were, agreeing to. So Pharaoh permits Joseph to take his father back to Canaan to bury, and Joseph is eventually buried in Egypt. So once again, this is another really nice thing that Pharaoh does. Like, they're not prisoners, obviously. Joseph's allowed to come and go. He's allowed to go bury his father. That's a big deal for him, and the Pharaoh allowed it and said, yeah, go. And of course. So Pharaoh's accommodating. So far, from what I've read in Genesis, it's not an oppressive Egyptian government, essentially. That's obviously, this could all change within the first couple chapters of Exodus. So I don't know. Obviously, today's Friday. I'm going to start get into Exodus, take my notes. Hopefully, I'll be able to put up a video this weekend that, I know you all are clamoring. I've got there are almost half a dozen people that are watching these things right now. So it's exciting. Times are exciting for me right now, and I'm enjoying it. So thank you so much. Genesis done. I will see you all in Exodus. And remember, there are a lot of unhappy people out there in the world. Do your best not to be one of them. And do your best to try to change the course of one of these unhappy people's days if you can. Just be the beacon of kindness and niceness as best you can out there. And I will see you guys next video. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend. Bye.